Roman era city of Scupi. Skopje Aqueduct. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Skopje, North Macedonia. We're here out today in a very interesting place. There are some old abandoned ruins here, and these are actually very, very old abandoned ruins. This is part of the old Roman era city of Scupi here from way, way back. Today we're going to explore around here a little bit, go to another site, and talk about the old Roman history of Skopje. So come along. Thanks for clicking on the video. If you want to help out the channel and help it grow, I really would appreciate it. Click on the like button down there, the subscribe button, and the little bell next to it to be notified for when new videos drop. It really helps the channel grow because it's going to help the YouTube algorithm recognize this content and spread it to other YouTube viewers. If you'd like to support the channel monetarily, I would appreciate that as well. You can leave a super thanks by clicking this thanks button here and give a small donation to the channel. I appreciate your support. So back to the video, enjoy. So here at the Roman city of Scupi. Now this site is like an archaeological site, but because of lack of funding, the site is no longer like a tourist attraction. There used to be a museum and a whole excavation going on here. In fact, there have been several excavations of not just this here, but also like down the hill. Let's see if we can get over here. Down the hill over here, there was even more ruins. And this originally was thought to date back, here you can see right here down the hill, the other ruins. This site here was thought to date back to like the 6th century BC or 5th century BC, so like 500 or 400 BC, and actually was a site that was actually inhabited by another civilization before, the Dardanians. So you can see here on the map in this area, the Kingdom of the Dardanians. This is the way it would have looked in like the 4th or 3rd century BC, so a little bit later than the period that we're talking about, but you can see the extent of the kingdom. And actually, if we zoom in here on the southern part of the kingdom, you can see right here Scupi, the city of Scupi, or today the modern city of Skopje, sitting right here along this river. And in this map, the river says Axios, and that's actually the river Vardar, the Vardar River that runs through the center of Skopje, like we saw in the previous video when we were right down there crossing those bridges near central Skopje. And it says Axios here because that's the Greek name for the river, but it's the exact same river. If we zoom back out, you can see the Dardanian Kingdom of the Dardanians is north of here, the Kingdom of Macedonia, and that, of course, is the famous ancient Kingdom of Macedonia with the leaders Philip of Macedon and Alexander the Great. And the Dardanians actually fought a series of wars against the Macedonians. The Macedonians and the Dardanians were enemies for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the Dardanians were probably the most powerful tribe and the most powerful kingdom in this area outside of Macedonia. And so during the time of Philip of Macedon and Alexander the Great, even though they were able to take over large parts of this region, Dardania managed to maintain a level of independence and still continue to be like a thorn in the side of Philip of Macedon and Alexander the Great. So when the Romans came here and they conquered this area in Macedonia, the Dardanians actually sided with the Romans and were allowed to then stay independent afterwards, and they expanded their territory. But ultimately, by around the 1st century AD, the Dardanians were also conquered by the Romans. Now this happened between the Macedonians and the Romans during a series of wars, 3 actually, the Macedonian Wars. On this map from the Second Macedonian War, you can see the many different allegiances between different factions and different kingdoms. Now this, of course, was all sort of part of a larger war around the Mediterranean. It folds into the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage, because the Atagonid kingdom, which is what Macedonia was after Alexander's death, Alexander the Great's gigantic empire that stretched all the way to India, fell apart after his death. You can see here the Atagonid kingdom on this map of the Second Punic War, or the Macedonian kingdom here on this map. Same kingdom, but much smaller than the significant empire that Alexander had conquered. And this made the Macedonians ripe for conquering by the Romans after they had finished off Carthage. And this site became a Roman city of Scupi. And the Roman city of Scupi was used as like a central site to expand out and continue the conquest of the Dardanian lands and bring the Dardanians into the Roman Empire. Now where we're standing right now used to be an amphitheater, like a big Roman theater. You can actually see here that this section here is curved, and this would be the seating. It's curved and it goes up the hill. It's tiered. And then here where we're standing, right here, would have been like the stage. You can see this much more easily if we look at it from above on a satellite view from Google Maps. You can see the very clear outline of the theater seating here, the curved seating area, and also you can see the ruins that are down the hill that were a little hard to see in the video, but you can see them clearly when you look at it from above. Now, if we zoom out to give you a reference of where this is all located in relationship to the rest of Skopje, up here in the northwest area of the city is where the Scupi ruins are, in relation to down here in the central part of Skopje. This is Macedonia Square, where we started the previous video. They're not exactly too far away, but definitely not close to each other as well, but you can see both of them, both the settlements very close to the river that runs through Skopje. Down here in the flat area here, they would have the show. Now, this site here, like I said, excavations, many different excavations during the 20th century found both here, this amphitheater or this theater, and also the site that was down the hill. And this theater itself, during the, very recent past, under the administration of the VMRO DPMNE party, the right-wing party that we talked about, that was in charge of overseeing the Skopje 2014 mega project. We talked about that in our first video here, link to that video in the description. But that party, that political party, as part of their excavation, not only of these ruins that you see down here at the bottom of the hill, but they had a plan to take this amphitheater and rebuild it basically and turn it into a theater, a 9,000 seat theater where people could come and see shows. This, of course, was a very controversial project because this is an archaeological site, and changing a preserved archaeological site from the Roman era into a modern theater, very controversial, of course. And as you can see, there is evidence of their work. Like, you can see some more modern, more modern concrete that's been added to the walls here. But the project actually ran out of funding. It didn't get very far. I think it got accomplished about 7 or 8% of what it was planned to do. And then it ran out of funding. It's one of the reasons why, if you look from above on the satellite view, that the theater part of the ruins is so much more distinct than the part of the ruins down here that's down the hill, just because this part has actually been partially rebuilt And in my opinion, it's a really, really bad move because ultimately these are historical ruins, archaeological ruins that date back thousands of years. And the second you start adding modern rebuilding to it, it just ruins it completely, and there's no going back. There's no way now to excavate this site without a significant undertaking in order to decide what is old and what is new. And if a future administration decides here in North Macedonia to reopen this as an archaeological site or sponsor archaeological excavation here, try and make a museum around this, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do that because of what was a very, very hasty decision made by the VMRO DPMNE party to try and rebuild this into some sort of modern theater. But here, the Roman city of Scupi. Now, Scupi was here and expanded out into the other parts of Skopje here. Expanded out for several centuries, actually. From, like I said, when it was Dardanian back in the 4th century, 4th or 5th century BC, through the Roman era, and all the way up until like the 5th or 6th century AD. And in between those times, it was attacked several times by barbarians and eventually destroyed in an earthquake. And after the destruction, the ruins were just left here. There was no rebuilding here. But when Emperor Justinian, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian from the Eastern Roman Empire, came here to found a new city, he founded it down by like the center of Skopje, where modern Skopje is now. And actually, we're going to go now to another site. There is also a very well preserved aqueduct here in Skopje, and we're going to go check that out. It is thought that the aqueduct was built either during the time of Scupi in order to provide water to Scupi, or later during the time of Justinian to provide water to the new city of the Byzantine Empire. So let's go check that out. So for just a little more Roman history, Justinian, also known as Justinian the Great, was emperor of Rome from 527 to 565 AD. So almost 1,000 years after the Dardanians here in Scupi. And by that point, Rome had separated into two separate dominions, Eastern Rome and Western Rome. The Eastern Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire, was where Justinian was. And the Western Empire actually had fallen to the Goths in the century before. And there was a series of wars that Justinian fought to try to reclaim the territory. And ultimately, during those wars, a plague broke out in the Byzantine Empire, and the wars, they did not go well. And ultimately, after Justinian's death in 565, everything fell apart in Western Rome. There was really no chance of retaking it. And the entire Western Roman Empire broke apart into separate, tribal kingdoms, basically. And in fact, Italy, the center of the Western Roman Empire, was not reunified until like the 1800s, the middle 1800s. Now, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, is located in and around what is now modern-day Turkey. The capital city of Constantinople is actually where Istanbul is now. Istanbul was Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. And Justinian these days is known as a very influential Roman emperor, one of the most influential. Of course, he did have his wars where he attempted to reclaim the Western Roman Empire, and by all means he succeeded, although his the hold was so tenuous that after his death the Roman Empire was no longer able to hold the Western lands. But Justinian also made major changes to Roman law and also implemented a building program that built many of the great works of Eastern Rome that still exist today, including the Hagia Sophia in what is now Istanbul. So here we are at the Skopje Aqueduct, here with our intrepid taxi driver behind us, Igor, who has actually been shuttling me around to these different places. Very thankful. Thank you, Igor. But here we are, the Skopje aqueduct. Now this is also like just sort of kind of in the middle of like a field here. You drive up this little dirt road, and all of a sudden out in front of you, you see this aqueduct, Skopje aqueduct. Now this thing is basically unknown as far as when this was built. From what I've read, there are a few different theories. One of them is that this was built back at the same time or just shortly after Scupi in order to provide water to the legionnaires in the fort and the growing city of Scupi. So that would have put it back in the, I don't know, right around like 1st century AD. And the other theories that I've read is that it was a Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, when Justinian came and founded, after the earthquake, the new city in what is now central Skopje, in Old Town. And then there's also a theory that this was built by the Ottomans in like the 16th century, which would put it like 1500, like 1,000 years later. It's interesting to me that the technology hasn't really changed that much in 1500 years. So they can't, so much so that they can't tell exactly when this was built. That if it was built in the Roman era, the 1st century AD, or it was built, 1500 years later, the technology is still exactly the same. But I think for me, it makes more sense that this thing was built by Justinian in that era. And that's only because the Scupi ruins are kind of like off that direction. And the center, if you were to follow this aqueduct, well, if it were to continue down towards like Skopje, the center is kind of like down there, basically. And this thing kind of, if you look at it, especially like on a map or a satellite view, it points right towards Old Town Skopje and Skopje Fortress, which is a 6th century like Byzantine fortress from down there. That's right down by the Old Town Bazaar. It's really amazing. You can get up close to it. One of these cool things about the fact that this is actually like not, there's no museum or anything, is you can actually get right up next to this thing. You can touch it. You can put your finger on the brick. The brick that was potentially laid here like 2,000 years ago. It's amazing. I think that's going to do it actually for this video. Now this is going to be a 2-part video because in the next video we're going to go down into Skopje, into central Skopje, where I mentioned the Skopje Fortress is, and also the Old Town Bazaar, to see like the oldest part of the city of Skopje. So we can see that as which in itself is like 1,500 years old. We can check that out in the next video. But hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you in the next one.